Welcome to Diablo 4. We start off with these thief guys, or maybe they're just dungeon divers or delvers, whatever the correct phrasing is. But based on the tone, I'm assuming they're thieves. They're in this tomb or dungeon thing, and this guy is a priest or some sort of magician. I have no idea, but he's really important for some reason. As this is happening, and they're all being chased by some undead ghoul creatures or something, and they're like, oh, we're so close, all the gold is behind this door. And Homeboy here is like, the only loot I'm looking for is knowledge. Because I guess books and shit don't exist in this universe. The lead thief is then like, hey, listen, you're kind of being a bit of a bitch. Why don't you go ahead and open this door for us, eh? So Homeboy starts reading the riddle on the wall and figures out that you gotta spill a bunch of blood on this disc thing to open the door. So he calls like the two henchmen thieves, who I'm gonna call Harold and Marvin. And the head thief, who I'm gonna call Mr. Cabot, is like, I'll hold him off. Which it seems like these things are afraid of fire, so I don't know why they didn't bring like more fire. I guess Mr. Cabot wasn't a Boy Scout because he is not prepared. So Harry and Marv and Homeboy slam their hands down on the disc and it begins to give them the zug. And they're all like, ain't no way this gonna work, bruv. And then, wouldn't you know it, the magical door begins to open. And Homeboy is like, we have to help Mr. Cabot. And Harry's like, there's no honor among thieves. And Marv goes to slam the door shut, condemning Mr. Cabot to death. And Harry's like, oh, so sad. We did all we could. At least we don't have to split it 4 ways, though. Harry is starting to get frustrated and is like throwing around Homeboy, which isn't a really good way to convince him to read the walls. Guess his mom never told him that you catch more flies with honey. So Homeboy starts reading and is like, this isn't a vault of riches. It's a summoning circle to summon demons and shit. So probably just best to cut our losses. Marv gets all pissy and is like, we came here for treasure, where are we? And isn't like this your intel as well? Like, I'm assuming Homeboy didn't put all this together himself. I'm assuming it was some sort of collaborative effort. And if he did recruit you and you didn't require any form of upfront payment, that's your own dumbass fault. Like, that's day one shit. Moving on, Homeboy is like, shit, I don't know, we're at maybe it's like a dungeon or a temple or the parking lot of a Wendy's off of I-75 in southern Ohio. I don't know, man. Then a spooky, ominous voice chimes in to inform them that it is in fact the Wendy's in southern Ohio. I mean, to inform them that it's like a gate to hell, which, to be honest, southern Ohio as a whole could be a gate to hell as well. Then Harry gets paranormal activity'd out of this shot, and Marv, being the big bumbling oaf they are, is like, what happened? And begins to walk to the center of the circle. And I don't know shit about summoning demons and whatnot, but I do imagine being at the center of a summoning circle is a quick way to turn yourself into a hashtag. Then bang, Marv looks up and sees Harry dangling, dripping blood everywhere, and then he dislocates every bone in his body. Cut back to Marv, who just heard the ominous voice say, blood is the key. And who is that behind you, Marv? Oh, just Mr. Cabot, the guy you killed earlier. Marv is having none of this, though. Swings her axe into Mr. Cabot. Side note, I know I'm calling this character, who I believe is a female, Marv, and that is solely because when I looked at these two characters, I thought of Harry and Marv from Home Alone. Mr. Cabot, whose jaw is now dangling by a thread, completely unfazed by this, looks at Marv all creepily, and then bang, now she's slammed against a pillar, just like Harry. Now the circle is doing some twisty-doos, and Homeboy is scrambling like a quarterback when the pocket collapses. We get some creepy shots of Harry and Marv getting their life forces sucked out or something, and cuts to Homeboy, who is praying like a man possessed. You see what I did there? Possessed? Moving on, Mr. Cabot is walking to the center of the circle, speaking some kind of incantation or something. And then, plot twist, Mr. Cabot isn't Mr. Cabot, but is instead this pale, bald guy who is Elias. Elias begins to summon Lilith, who I did 5 minutes of research on, and all I could gather is that she was believed to be Adam's first wife, then they had a falling out, and now she's the sexy demon lady. Elias uses telekinesis, to bring Homeboy to the center of the circle, and basically tells him that in his quest for knowledge, it has led him away from the light. So, his soul is already corrupt, and if he wants the knowledge, he has to surrender himself to Lilith. And Homeboy actually fucking does it. Then we get this scene of a weird pseudo birth thing, and then we get this shot of Lilith, which, okay, low key, Lilith is kind of a baddie. Like, maybe not in this shot because she's covered in what I assume is like placenta or whatever the demon equivalent of that is. But, like, on the cover and in other depictions of her later in the game, I don't know. I'm just saying I have mixed feelings, is all. Then it zooms out and we see Lilith standing there wearing a cape of what is essentially her own afterbirth, and we roll credits. Then it does a scene involving the actual player character, which is pretty neato, but there's some dark narration about how Sanctuary isn't meant for mankind and that Haradrim is like protecting people from stuff, and now they're all a shell of their former selves and whatnot. Some really cool shots of your character adventuring, then you approach a statue who I believe is Homeboy from the opening cinematic. Then all of a sudden whispers in the dark and the horse is spooked, so he runs off to his death. I'm assuming because we hear a bunch of sounds that sound like a horse being killed. Then bam, spooky woodland creature. We, as you could imagine, are shooketh. And more whispers, and then we get to the next scene of us walking in a fucking blizzard, apparently, and then we finally collapse inside of a cave. So now we're sleeping, probably freezing our nuts or lack thereof off. Then what is that in the distance? A bear? An eldritch horror? We don't really know. Then we wake up and find out it was all a dream, and the game starts. I give this cinematic 4 doomed adventurers out of 1 cursed world.